Hello, welcome to Reframing Mindset Podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome back to Reframe Mindset Podcast. My name is Concept Brooks. This episode is going to be week 42 of the 95 experience, or week 5 in this new department. Mhm. And again, I passed the next test and be- barely again. But, I think passing these tests could be the way, even though it seems that I wasn't going to pass and I passed. Yeah, I think it's down to two things: luck and and the fact that those years of doing studying for tests in school actually paid off. Like legit, all those years of practicing to doing tests, it subconsciously paid off now. So I think it's just those two reasons. It was kind of just, I would say, luck, and also the fact that I've been studying for science tests or stuff for years. So when it come in, I think what I did was, even though it's foreign to me, what I knew was techniques. And I as back to one of my previous episode taught to me by one of my science teachers, don't learn things in a vacuum. Do Yeah, that actually helped me passing these tests where I didn't just think one dimensional when I was attempting these tests, as we're able to use I we're able to use different resources offered by the business to actually look for the answer. So I take the time to just actually not go in there one track minded, even when felt like it was even when it felt like I had no chance, and I still attempted and boom, I passed. So that's one of those things where you be like, if you another quote again, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I had to take the shot and then boom. So far I passed 100%. So yeah, so that is due to years and years of practicing. That's so far. So basically just one more left, and I can't say that this luck will take me to that last one as well. But it's the last one, and then boom, we'll be back on doing the real work again. And then when I start doing the real work, this month will pass, and then what happens is that I already have the experience from the first department that I got into of dealing with customers. So you're not going in foreign as I would be the first time I actually got to work. So it just me just translating all the things that I learned in training to deal with the real people again. So it just, as I said, this phase is just me applying what I learned over those few weeks. And yeah, yeah, that was it. Also, this week, what happened was I fell for it, bro. I fell for a scam, a phishing scam. So that's something that for you to Google phishing emails. I fell for one of them, and my card got compromised. And I saw, and good thing about it was that there was no money in the card at the point in time. So what happened was that boom, when I saw the fact that it was got compromised, I'm like, oh my god, I have to deal with this real quick. Then boom, actually, just went out there, got it replaced real quick, and then now that was dealt with. But the thing about it is, because of the compromise, I actually missed a day of work, And then at the work now you get compensation based on attendance. You can get a nice compensation. So that's something. And what happens is that boom, I actually got it this time around, but for this week, kind of messed up because what happened was that, this week or this phase, this phase of the year, what I'm trying to do is getting all my finances correct. And one of the thing is that what I say is that the 9 to 5 thing is kind of separating you from your dreams. When you're going, when you're going to work, the time that I'm going to work, by the time I leave work, there's a lot of things that are closed and not able to actually. So I'm not able to actually make positive moves. So it's just one of those trade offs where I say in the 95 world is really weird. And you have to actually make smart moves where you'd be like, okay, I'm going to lose in the short term to win in the long term because as the 95 thing is not really set up for you to get rich. You have to actually make smart moves and say, okay, you have to take a loss here to get a win there. And that was one of the things we had to actually just take the loss, the fact that, okay, if I did not actually get this thing sorted out before the payday, the scammers would actually get the money from the card on payday. So it's like one of the things I get it done before payday starts it dropped in. We're like, okay, it's safe. Yeah, so that's all you have to really think about these stuff. Like one of these things where once your finances get compromised, it's one of those important things you have to deal with immediately as it occur, and so that you don't mess up. Even if it means for you to lose money in the short term. One of the things that I guess I want to do an episode, on it, but it makes sense to mention it now. Was what happened was that when it started, it was a small thing that happened, small thing, and that in that small little scam, I may have overlooked it if it wasn't for the fact that the bigger attempts, I see bigger purchases were trying to be attempted. So what happened was that the fact that the first fishing that I saw was boom, it took a small amount. I tried to take a small amount, be like, you know, but then I see the bigger amounts trying to be taken, and that's when I actually took it serious. It's one of those things where I realized that if you overlook the small problem, the big problems will take you over. And it does one of those things where I try that lesson for me is to actually try to not avoid the little problems because if I just for example if that was the only attempt on that day I would not have realized it and then boom payday boom all the finances got wiped out and it was one of those days when I was living paycheck to paycheck to actually survive to that one. So it's like I said, those are unfortunate things that can happen to you when. So it's not. So one of those things I say is getting a work is a great thing and stuff like that, but there's still obstacles you have to actually overcome. Is this thing no matter which phase of life you're in, it's not easy. And the thing about each phase is that when these trials come, you I said, it really makes you angry and frustrated and all those stuff and stressed out and all those stuff. So that's one of those things where why I made this episode and stuff like that. That for you to aware and be calm in these situations to make logical decisions. Because when you're emotional and stuff, you're angry and as I said, doing the work that I'm doing, I dealt with a lot of people with a lot of things that like this that happens to me. Just now, what happens that it's so clouded up. Some of them is so clouded up by the fact that it happened. They weren't able to actually think logically. I came in angry and all those stuff, angry and because you're angry and all these emotions. You know, to just think clear to say, okay, all I have to do is make the call, get this sorted out, make the call to to the bank, get this sorted out, and then boom, it's all over because the bank is designed, have system in place to actually do that. You don't have to really out here be stressing and be like, oh my god, if the bank don't the bank have system in place to actually get this started out. So the fact that I knew that calmly took that knowledge and be like, okay, I'm not out here angry and all those stuff. Right? For a lot, if you take this episode and be like, okay, I'm gonna apply that to my life where if something negative happens, I just take the time to analyze what in the world just happened and what is the best course of action to actually solve the problem without getting over emotional. You can save yourself a lot of time and solve the problem faster and minimize damages, losses, and stuff as well. So that's one of those things that you know that I it has been a while since I felt for all of those stuff, and I be- and it was it was one of those situations where I had to try it because it was it was one of those things where I realized that scams and all those stuff are really smart, are actually putting effort in what they do. Just like how you put in effort to get your work and put in work, scams are actually putting effort to actually trick you. So it's a full time job to actually do the scam stuff like that. So it's one of those things where I attempted just to see if it would work, and then it was a bad move. It was a bad move. I took a it was a last got a compromise, but because I knew, because of my mind knew that okay, it could be a scam, and then when I took the risk, when the risk failed, I was calm enough to say, okay, boom, let me just deal with this and get it over with and stuff like that. Because that's how you make the move out of poverty or whatever you make. You're taking calculated risk, and when you take those calculated risks, now you learn from it. I say, okay, that is a bad move. So you know that okay, so that was a bad move. Get it resolved, and then going forward, that okay, I have to be more mindful of these things now going forward. I have to make more mindful decision about these things going forward, and that's why you have to really take things. you that's why you have to really take things. One of my episodes talk about loss of money and stuff like that. So, as I said, this journey, the thing about it when you're coming out of poverty, the worst thing you can have is something happen to your finance, and it's really depressing. You when you're making progress. But one of the things you have to really be like, you have to think about it is it's just a phase. It once you pass, it's a phase. Once you pass through that phase, then it's over. Same thing with this work. I'm doing all these tests, and it's really rigorous reading all these stuff. But one thing I always think about is all I have to do is just pass through this phase, and then boom, deal with the call, and then bam, it's done. It's done, and that's why you have to really think about it. It's just a phase. Get it resolved as quickly as possible, and then boom, the phase is done, and then you learn from it. Mhm. So that's one of those things. So what else? Ah, well, again this week what happened was that at this new department, because they're new and their one thing was, you know, we got rewarded with food, KFC and cake and stuff like that. And it was really good, and I understand those things as well. Of rewarding your team and such, but I know the operative thing is KFC and cake. Those, if you actually get them a lot, can really be unhealthy. And as I said, the 95 lifestyle is really an unhealthy lifestyle. It's good to appreciate those stuff and eradicate them when you can. But it's one of those things that kind of remind you again, you have to actually do have to take things outside of your 9 to 5 to keep yourself healthy because the 9 to 5 world is really an unhealthy world. The business world is really an unhealthy world because you're sacrificing your health, focus trying to make this money. They have to be like, okay, part of this podcast of experience is just to teach you that your health is also important as well. And I just you're going to go in there and they're going to spoil. That's what the 9 to 5 stuff do. Spoil you and stuff like that. But it's up to you to say, okay, don't take be over the spoil by the 9 to 5 thing. Know that okay, there's you have other things as well. So that's basically for this episode. Thank you for listening. I look forward for the next episode. Hmm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
Is curses. Like for example, generational curses and stuff. And you always hear people talking about you want to be the person that change your life, break the generational curses and stuff like that. And what I've gone through and see is that what I realize is that there are various levels of curses that I can see so far. Like you have generational curses where in a generation of bad habits, in a your generation of bad habits, you break it, you can basically change a whole different generations. You know, kid change a whole different generation, turn the trajectory. You know, and, and you have that you have, for example, you have also family curses. You're not born in the best situation, but you can basically do a thing that basically just change the family tree forever.